Okay. Okay. All right, just starting really quick. So basically, the reason that we're doing this is because we're working with a customer, and while the work was going on, Terry, who works with me, mentioned that he had generated the client code to talk to the backend API. It was like, what? What are you talking about? You generated the client code. So that's why this started. So I thought it was probably a good time to talk in general just about what's happening with AI and with development. And then there's a few things that are going on out there. There's a few things that people have shared with me. Some of the stuff that's coming with GitHub's CoPilot looks really interesting. So I wanted to talk about that too as well. Specifically, basically you pointed at a block of code and it tells you what the code does, which just blows my mind. So I teach at a number of colleges, and one of the things that I tell all the students is basically I'm really jealous of them because they're starting at a stage where the learning ability from using AI and also just the speed of development, I think that's going to just ramp up over the next few years is just really exciting. So I thought we'd talk about it a little bit. Talk about it a little bit with just with a mindset of looking at drone development, because that's what we're talking about. It's a drone talk, and then also the fact that we were, the fact that this came from drones in the first place. Terry's great work. So we're going to talk a little bit about news, and then we're going to talk about using OpenAPI to generate the client code from a Swagger file, how that worked. I have somebody else, Wahid, who's one of our he's a full-time employee now. He wrote up a small like proof of concept file, which he just did a great job too as well. So we're going to share that. So if somebody wants to play with this afterwards, so that you can figure out how to do it for yourself, because that's what this is always about. I did want to talk about GitHub CoPilot because some of the things that are coming, they're not in Android Studio yet, because basically CoPilot is more of a VS Code thing. And then eventually it will be in Android Studio. But if you download VS Code and start playing with it, you can get to use that. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was next month, what we're going to do. So just the plan. So the first and the last part of the agenda are kind of, they're together. So the news is that the next version of the DJI SDK 5.0 will support the Mavic Mini 3. So currently the Android 5 SDK is it's very restrictive. So you basically the only drones that are supported is the M30, the M300, and the Mavic 3 Enterprise. So like minimum point of entry is $5,000. So that's a lot of money. But the new version of the SDK, which is not out yet, which will be 5.3. We'll look at that next month, hopefully, because it said it's going to come out in early Q2. So I'm hoping it's next month. And then also AUVSI's Exponential Show, which is one of the big drone shows, is on this time next month. So it's probably going to be later in the month. So I'm hoping I can give them some time. Otherwise, I'm sure I can come up with something else if like all good software, it takes forever to get released. Okay, so OpenAPI. So essentially what you have is, I don't wonder why Firefox is giving me those notifications. So just turn them off. I just turn off all notifications. I always turn them on later. So basically what you do is, so Wahid got a Swagger file from Swagger Hub, and then used OpenAPI to add it to build.gradle, to the project build.gradle, which I'll show you in a second. And GitHub Actions runs the Gradle W file, and it generates the client file to talk to the API in the API common folder. So all that basically he's doing is he's uploading a YAML file. Very simple workflow that we have in with GitHub Actions, and then it just generates all the client code. And then I added a little bit at the end where I found that one of the things that ChatGPT is good at for coding is for actually creating unit tests. So if you give it a Java file, a Kotlin file, a Solidity file, which is where I found most success, it will basically give you a bunch of unit tests. Then you can then do. So now you have no excuse for writing unit tests anymore because ChatGPT is going to do it for you.
Oh, except it's been failing me all day writing unit tests.
Oh, it's not working for you? Yeah, well, that's always the way. It's like you
when there's special cases, like I have a database involved, it's a little different. But
yeah, it's not 100% there with mocking yet, really, is it? But it's
that's exactly, you nailed it. That's exactly the problem.
Yeah. Thank you. It sounds like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not a developer. I just play one on TV. Okay, so the first thing that you do basically is you go out to get this Swagger file. So we were just looking, rather the guy who wrote the proof of concept, Wahid, was just looking to see if he could find, just went out to Swagger Hub, did a search for any API that was kind of drone related. So Swagger file's great. They basically a really good documentation for how this is supposed to work. So in this case, what you're using is drone actions. Another one is taking photos. I think the ones that he had, he just basically was looking for a get, a put, a delete, a post, and a get. That's really all he was looking for. So we just took 4 examples from there. So do you download the file? Come on back to me. No, Swagger Hub's demanding that I stay within their ecosystem. Okay, 2 can play that game. Okay, so then we have this drone Swagger file. So you can basically upload any YAML file here into your GitHub repo. So I will send out a link to the presentation. It's just a couple of Google slides. So if you want to play with it later, and one of the links in the resources will have this drone Swagger file. So okay, so we have this swagger.yaml, and like I said, if you want to change it to something else, you basically just upload another one. So this is an Android app, and then so the concept is that we're going to have an Android app, which is we're going to use the GitHub workflow here to generate the client code, which is going to be under. Don't know how familiar you guys are with Android. It's going to be under API comments. So basically, this is the code that it's going to create, which is basically drone get, drone put, drone push. Okay, let's go back a bit. Okay, so far we have our YAML file, and then we need to somehow call the OpenAPI. So what we do with OpenAPI is, as with, in Android, you have 2 build.gradle files. You got one at the project level, you got one at the app level or the module level. And you're adding here, this is like, okay, we have to have the basic libraries that we need for Android to exist. And then we're adding this one, which is the OpenAPI generator. And OpenAPI generator has a bunch of functions of tasks that you can call. So basically, really, really straightforward. I can't believe how amazingly simple this is, where we're telling it to generate an API using the swagger.yaml, and then telling it where the output directory is, telling it what the package is, how it's going to get invoked, and then just some simple config options. In this case, it's Java 8. You must be using Dolphin instead of the latest one, Electric Eel. And then copy the A files into projects. So then we just basically copy them into the project. So we have Swagger, build.gradle. Next part is our GitHub workflow. So this is our workflow YML file, still a YAML file, and this is a GitHub action. So all that this is really doing is saying, make sure that you if you build an Android file, typically the way people do it is they build it with Android Studio. So you're just building the file, but under the covers it's calling gradle W. So it's gradle W build. In this case, we have a new task, which is gradle W generate API. So it goes looks at the API in the swagger.yaml file, and then using OpenAPI it generates all the code for you, and then we tell it where to. We want to copy the files from where it initially put it to where it needs to go. And that, in a nutshell, is about as simple as it gets. So I have a few other things that I wanted to show you.
I have a few.
So I have, so this is, let's do slideshow. Let's just do, I just run through real quick, hold on. Hopefully this video works. Okay. Gosh darn it. Okay. If not, I can run it remotely anyway. I have it here. Okay, so what do I have? So GitHub Actions drone Swagger. So this is the file. So basically, here's what it is. So he's now telling us this is our Swagger file. Change it for whatever you want. Upload a brand new one from the GitHub repo. Sorry, from the Swagger hub. So if there's something else you want, or your own one, commit changes. And then what are we doing? What does he do after this? Then it's running. So GitHub Actions is running now. So you can see that it's generating the API code. So this is running through the different parts. It's checking out the code, generating the API code, copying the API files, committing and pushing the changes just from one little Yammer file. Swagger YAML file. Okay, what else happened now? Let's go a bit faster. Come on, man. Don't know if there's anything after this. Okay, everything's done. I'll look at the code. Automatically updated the API code. So Git Actions is adding its command. So it's in the commit. So you have an audit trail, Java, com.restart, and then API common. Yeah, we get it. Okay, so then, all right, so that means the code's worked. So if we look at the Android code, just the code that you actually wrote, that you wrote. There's a few things that he did. Main activity.kt, this is the main thing. So basically there's just one little thing. So there's 4 buttons in a little app that he wrote that works with this. He also wrote a little Flask app, which basically, runs a backend server because we wanted to try it against something. And then the button, there's 4 buttons that we'll see when we run it. So it's just 4 massive buttons. First one is taking off. Second one is, what is it doing? Get HTTP. Taking a photo, changing the gimbal. I think really that's all the different things he did just based on what he was trying to do. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons, and then we'll see when we run it what it actually looks like. So let me just run this real quick, see if I can find it. Yeah. So here's the main activity that we have. So the app's going to run. And then on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, we have the Android code and Android Studio. And then the left-hand side, it'll show what the results are from the logging that is in the little app that he's running, his server-side app. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the 4 buttons that I showed you. So you can see over here we have the put, the get, the put, the delete. So depending on which button that you pushed, and it's calling drone 1, 2, 3, whatever the action is. Let me move it back a bit so you can see what's going on. Okay, so in a nutshell, we have basically created the connection to the backend server without having to spend any more time than otherwise. If somebody, so the way that this would work in the real world would be, yeah, your API team, your server team has written an API. They've set it up correctly, so based, normal REST API. They've created, like all good API developers, a Swagger file. So you take your Swagger file, you put it in this, and then you can focus on what you want to do for the user interface. Obviously, our fabulous user interface could be, although it's fabulous, it still could be dramatically improved. So you'd spend all your time improving your user interface, and then not having to worry about the connecting to the backend API. Terry, did you find that you had to do any more coding afterwards to get that to work?
So
can you hear me? Because I've been trying to interrupt you.
Yeah, I can hear you now. I never shut up. That's my problem.
So what I use it on the client API that I had the Swagger files for, it's very complex, and it did generate some bad artifacts, and I did have to go clean up a few. Like, it was just like some imports were doubled for some reason, and it could have actually been my fault, but I did have to clean it up after it generated. But I've been using it to great effect since, and it's been awesome. I do want to also point out that you can generate the files of Gradle locally too, just by running the Gradle task in Android Studio. You don't have to send it to GitHub. I mean, that's the preferred thing, because like eventually what you'd like to do is like have the API code that it gets generated, have that under git ignore, so but there, so that you can use it, and then have it generated on the server side, because then if like maybe a variable name changes or something like that in your Swagger spec, it'll get regenerated on deploy.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good point, because he did go to the extra effort to put it into the GitHub Actions. But yeah, just like any Gradle W build or Gradle W test, you can run it locally, or you can run it on your CI server. That's usually where I run it, from the command line on a CI server, because it's much easier to integrate it with Jenkins than to use the plugin.
Yeah. And then I also wanted to point out in the configuration that you showed, you can, and if I can show my screen, I have the web page up that shows the different options for the Kotlin plugin for OpenAI, and it has yeah, great different options for. Let's do my whole screen. Great. I hate when people say this, but can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So this is the GitHub page for oops, no, this is the GitHub page here for the OpenAI generator, and this is the generator that's specific for Kotlin. So when you tell Gradle that you're going to use this plugin to generate code, this is the actual options for the plugin. And I wanted to point out, this is the best part, is that you can pick right here this library option. You can generate using JVM KTOR, which I have no idea what that is. And then you can use OKHTTP 4, 3, Retrofit 2, multi-platform. So these are all, this is what will get generated as your client code when you run it. Right now, I tend to just use Retrofit 2. It's very familiar. And then I also like to use RX3. So down here, you can say there's some sub options down here where you can say use RxJava 3 right here. And it says it's only available for the Retrofit 2 library, which is very fortunate for me. And then I just set that to true. And then I end up with an API that's been generated, and then all of the methods have all of my observable, all my flowables, all my stuff that I can just tap in and string together all my code together with Rx. So it's very nice, and it's been working very well for me and saved me so much time and headache. And then up here, in case backend has a particular date library they need to support, I didn't have to change this at all. Oh, and I was doing actually also generate your room models. So if you're using Android Room database to persist your data, which is a very good idea.
What? It does room too, so it does all the DAOs and everything?
Yeah, so yeah, but I had to do it in a funky way. I'll show you. I'm looking for it right now. Where it says use coroutines. No, use RxJava. Where did it go? There's a setting in here that says generate room models, but it's only for the option. It's only for the volley option. And so what I did is I generated the volley code and then stole all the room models that it generated, and then went back and generated for Retrofit 2 with RX3, and then just plopped the room models in there. So now I have all the room models for my database. The thing, and I had to do that because there was no way to get RX3 to work with volley this way. So it was kind of a I'm addicted to using RX for all of my async. I got it to work. But I don't see it in here, but I swear to you, there is a thing that says use room models.
Yeah,
generator.
I know it's demo gods.
Use code.
You can never find it when you look at it. I know why it works for Volley, because Volley is the preferred Google way of doing it.
Oh,
so
right here.
that's why.
Yeah.
Where is it? Losing you.
So that your Swagger finds, it will generate the room database as well, and also has a nice method that will. So it's been very handy.
Okay, I don't know about everybody else, but I was actually losing you there in and out. But I guess we got the general gist. Volley a database.
My bad. Failing.
If you want the room database entities created for you, and then if you still want to use retrofit, just cut and paste. Anything else?
Exactly.
It might be me. Anything else?
That's all I wanted to bring up. I think I'll type in if something else comes to mind.
Okay, can you pass it back to me?
But I wanted to make sure that you knew that you could run that locally on Gradle.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's just simpler.
It's true, and like I said, it saved not only you writing the code to talk to the backend, but it saves time to debugging that code, running through QA, to test all your happy paths. That's all like done for you now. You can just, and I've trusted the API. It has not failed me. It's done very well. So that's my speech.
And it's used in a real world app, but we won't tell you what it is because it's not fair. But it is a drone app.
I've used it in a past app.
Pardon?
There you go.
I lost you again. What did you say at the end? You used it in a...
Oh, and a banking app for MFCU.
Oh, cool. All right. I didn't know it was around that long. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about as well, because I seem to be having a lot of luck lately, is with ChatGPT. Just essentially saying, hey, generate unit tests. So at the top, I'm saying generate unit tests for this Kotlin file, just pointed at the file. And it's doing pretty good for me. It always takes me much more time to figure out what on earth I should be testing. So ChatGPT for me just seems to be a really good way of starting the conversation in my head on what I should be doing for unit testing. So I think it's a great way to start. I think it's a really good way for junior developers to start getting more into unit testing. That's what I think this is better for. Yes, Terry?
I just wanted to add.
No, still can't hear you. What was it?
Oh, you can't hear me? This sucks. All right, I'm sorry.
You want to put it in the chat, please? Okay, it's going to put in the chat. Okay, and then I did have a look at how Android works with CoPilot. So I signed up for the CoPilot trial. It's not there yet. It's kind of IntelliSense on steroids. So basically what I was doing is, if you say, let's go in here, let's create another layout. I don't know if this will work because I can't remember what I actually typed to get it to work. There's a lot of playing around to get it to work. So I'm sure when you get used to it, it's probably going to work better. So, and then so we go to code, say generate username and password. And then you basically say refresh, and then hopefully it comes back with the XML. No completions were found. That's really annoying. Terry said, I wanted to say that you're spot on. I often say that I lack the creativity to figure out what tests I need. ChatGPT has been enlightening for showing me what kind of tests are common. Maybe I need to do it at the top level. Yeah, see, now basically what it does is it will give you the edit text, plus it will give you the, if you hit tab, it'll give you everything. Obviously, this is not what you want inside a a layout. It's figuring out what to do for an activity. If I go back to here again, say, if you do escape, I think it gets rid of it, and then I'll try to refresh again. No, it's thinking. Again, it's giving me fields. So maybe if I say generate linear layout, I don't know, give it a hint. And that's a lot of what you're thinking the whole time. It's like how to get stuff done. I found that it's helpful for a lot of stuff that I do with students where I'm trying to say, okay, give me the world's simplest recycler view. So it seems to be, really good at that. So I've done that a lot. That seems to be a good way of working. And then here I did I had a simple activity, which was just saying convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. So it just wrote it for me. So it's just something simple as that. So, but there's more coming. So I'm not going to be too hard on CoPilot just yet, because there are other things that are happening that somebody pointed out to me a few days ago. Fella is this guy's name. So basically what it's doing is currently only works in VS Code, but I'm expecting it to come soon. So what you do is you highlight the code and then ask CoPilot what the code does. So it will tell you what to do. So if you're trying to use somebody else's code, which we have all the time, it's pretty rare that you get a greenfield site that you start to write the code from scratch. So a lot of times you're trying to figure out what the code means, even if it's your own code after 6 months. You can create custom prompts, what a block of code does, translate the code into many different languages. So now we do this in Android between Java and Kotlin, but you may want to translate your code into Rust. I could see that being interesting, all sorts of stuff. And then test generation. So they're going to do test generation too as well. To get the CoPilot labs, you basically need a GitHub CoPilot account. And once you have that, they let you into the CoPilot labs. There is a new one called it's their version of ChatGPT, which is called CoPilot X, I believe. And that's a beta, which I haven't been able to get my hands on yet. So here are the resources. So we have the Swagger file that my guy Wahidu did the proof of concept. That's where he found that. Here's where the code is. And then I did want to put something in here about the CoPilot lab stuff. I've been playing with VS Code for the last few days. It's great fun. I can't wait for it to appear in Android Studio, and it seems to be that's the way that the CoPilot stuff works. So CoPilot originally was not available in Android Studio and available as a VS Code plugin, and then a few weeks or a month later it appeared in Android Studio. So I'm super looking forward to when this stuff starts to come in, because there's nothing worse than starting off on an app and trying to figure out what somebody else did. So if this even gives me an idea about what the code does, especially if it's a large code base, then I think that's going to be excellent. Hey, Krishna, sorry, we're not got much time left, but I did record this if you want to go and have a look at it later. So the other thing I wanted to mention was, so next month, there's a couple of things going on. One is AUVSI is on from the 8th to 11th. So I don't know. I might do it the week before, early May, to do the meetup. But what I really want is for the next version of the MS SDK. So it's V3. So V3 is going to out in early Q2. I won't beat them up on the typo. A lot better than my Chinese. So we will support Mini 3 Pro and the Mini. I'm hoping, that, fingers crossed that's May, so then I can do this in the next meetup, and we'll start to have a look at the MS SDK. For those who haven't played with it, it's very different, especially when we come to missions. Although I don't know if that's going to make any sense in the ME3, because on the Mini 3, because they may just stick with virtual sticks. But there's a whole template file, WPML files that you have to do for waypoint missions now. And then, I'll probably get Terry to come back, because he's done most of the SDK v5 development of the company along with somebody else. So probably talk about that. Okay, anybody got any questions? Anybody got any use cases that they've used that they really like, that they want to share? No. Okay.
Just wondering if has anyone tried making a Flutter app using the DJI SDK?
We did. We didn't get very far though. It's on my list. I have a list of things that I'm looking at in the next quarter, and so I want to do some more stuff on embedded programming for drones. I really want to do something about autonomous ag because I think that's like a huge area that I think could be really helped with drones. And then Flutter's next on my list. So we'll probably do a DJI SDK with Flutter, or I'm worried that whatever bridge you have to create to talk to the SDK won't work. However, there's always ways around this. We're doing some ATAC work at the moment. You know, that works with the DJI SDK. So I'm hoping that there would be a way for Flutter to work with it. For those who haven't used Flutter, Flutter is the cross-platform, next-gen cross-platform, iOS and Android and Windows apps. It's kind of a JavaScript framework, but it gives you the real buttons. So if you're, it's not like some of the earlier ones, which were kind of ugly. So, you know, I'm thinking of, what was it, Maui now, what they call it on Microsoft? What was Xamarin before? You always seem to get the worst of both platforms when you wrote kind of those cross-platform ones. Flutter is a bit different. It actually does use the native button, so it looks more like a native app. And it would be super cool if you could write a Flutter app that will work on multiple platforms. Having said that, just thinking about it, the DJI SDK is probably the wrong SDK to do that with, because DJI SDK is only supported in Android currently. I know that there's a Windows one and there's an iOS one, but they're kind of, unless you're using the Mavic 2 and earlier drones, you can't really write any apps. You know, if you won't be, sorry, what I'm trying to say is the Android v5 SDK, which is kind of the future of the DJI SDKs, is only supported in Android. The other ones are just getting, you know, support updates, defect updates. And the Windows one, I don't think I've seen much movement in that in quite a long time. Does that help, Peter?
So they're pretty much dropping iOS support in the future.
Yeah, pretty much. So it might make sense to look at Flutter and see if we can get it to work with maybe the Parrot SDK, Ground SDK. That might make sense. Or Mav SDK. Well, Mav SDK is different versions anyway. Yeah, we could try though. Definitely something worth looking at. It
is still nice in that you could use the same code on your laptop. I've never used Flutter, but I understand it'll run on Mac OS and Windows as well.
Yep. Yeah, correct. So you have iOS, Android, Mac OS, and Windows, and it's pretty good. I kind of lost interest in it for a few years, and then when I looked at it again the start of this year, I was kind of blown away about how much it had moved on. So yeah, it's definitely on my list of subjects that we want to talk about. And thanks, Peter. I really like when people give me ideas about stuff to look at in the future, because I don't want this to be my show. I prefer it to be everybody's show.
Okay. My other question was if GPT in your experiments has expressed any familiarity with the DJI SDKs, or if it's not that specific.
Yeah, it'll pull up anything. It'll tell you exactly what it is. Okay. My running joke is, you know, the way you Google yourself. So I chat GPT myself, and I've written a whole bunch of books, and it listed books that I hadn't written, but I wish I'd written.
Nice.
I thought it was great.
Well, that might, if you could get those published, that's a decent way to make money.
No, you haven't seen my last royalty statement.
Okay.
No, I'll stick to the teaching if I want extra revenue. The poor old book industry is on its last legs for a number of reasons. One, because the publishing companies basically do $50 a month for have all you can eat, and then because if your book gets even remotely famous, somebody's going to rip it off and it'll be a PDF on a pirate website pretty quick. So yeah, I think the publishing industry. I'm teaching a blockchain course at the moment. I cannot find a blockchain book that's up to date. They've all stopped. Oh, the other thing that's important to know about ChatGPT as well is currently it's the one that I'm using anyway, just the normal one, not the 4. It stops at November 2021, so it doesn't have any information after 2021, which is kind of unusual. But I'm sure
I was just about to say that.
beat you to it.
If you can hear me.
ChatGPT 4, I haven't played with that yet. Yeah, I can hear you, Terry. Yeah. All right, guys.
Problems with MacBox.
Anybody else? Anything else? Thanks for the comments, Peter. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. I will put this up online tomorrow. And thanks all for coming. And see you again next month. Not exactly sure when yet. Thank you.
Thanks, Godfrey and Terry.
Bye now.
Yep. Bye. Thank you.